And Bethany. Hello, everybody.
Hi.
Yeah, welcome back to the virtual book hinge. I just sent out a tweet saying final week 5 hangout. It's just hard to believe.
It went by really quickly.
It
Yeah.
really did. Let's hope the rest of the summer doesn't go by as quickly.
Mhm.
Yeah. Well, I don't believe that Lyle will join us from the Philippines, and I
Oh,
happen to know that Oliver is at freshman orientation at UNC Asheville, so I don't think we'll be
cool.
seeing
That's awesome.
them either. I know. So, but I really have enjoyed them visiting our classes. So, and many of you have written that you have too. So, it's really cool. Well, tonight, first let me put the link in case I show a PowerPoint slide, and I have all the links on our Week 5 Hangout under Archives, and there's the link. Okay. And we're going to start off talking about nonfiction. I wanted to share this just a little clip that I read, and I guess it interested me because I'm a gardener, grew up on a farm, love to garden. But this gardener says, the more permaculture techniques I can use in the garden, the better. I intend to get more versed in companion planting to help with pest problems, but heavy year-round permanent mulching to enrich the soil, cut back or even eliminate irrigation and weeding, and to loosen hard soil is what I'm focusing on this spring. Ms. Stout passed away when I was a little girl, and she gardened this way for many years. Her book is the first nonfiction I've read that had me laughing out loud in parts and wishing I had actually known the author. There was so much information that as soon as I finished it, I flipped back to the beginning to read. So, a little surprised at how engaging nonfiction could be. And before I ask you guys about your relationship with nonfiction, I thought we would try out a little strategy, one of my favorites that Bethany has discovered and used in her CCI, yeah, Interact. And so I've never done this before using this tool, but let's take a look and see how it works. So what I'm going to do is give you a link. Okay. And here you go. We'll see if it's still there. So when you click on it, do you see an intra? Is it coming up? No, it doesn't. So that's the one thing about this tool. It doesn't stay long, but don't worry because I've actually saved the image, so I'll just upload the image again. It's people can write on. It's called CoSketch, and people can write on it at the same time, and you can take a picture of it. But it's rather ethereal that it doesn't last for very long. Now, if you either refresh or hit that page again, you should see an image that looks like an Interact that Bethany will recognize straight off. Is that working for you?
Yeah.
Cool, cool. I'm trying to decide. Let me do a frame screen save. So like I said, that's the only thing you have to have a copy to upload because it only lasts for ever so long. Okay. There you go. All right. So this is how I thought we would work it. Well, Bethany, you want to explain Interact?
Sure, I'll do my best. I'm still kind of learning myself, but
Yeah.
I think essentially it's a way for students to interact with the text by taking a particular stance. And so a lot of times it's done with more like controversial or that kind of issues. And the example that I found was in a textbook in a class I took last semester as a way to do like a during activity for like a scaffolding reading project like we did.
Mm-hmm.
or as a post-reading activity, and you have kids get into groups of like 3 or 4, and it's teacher-led, so you have a leader within your group, but then the teacher is kind of like pacing them. And I can't remember all of the steps off the top of my head, but they essentially start reading the text, and then they talk about and summarize it within their groups and like anything that they felt or just kind of initial thoughts within their group. And then eventually they move to this part that Dr. Christman just showed us, where it's like a scorecard, and you score each of the statements yourself, but then you try and guess what your group members would think about them as well, just kind of based on your conversation that. And then after everybody's scored it, you look at if you were right or not. You score yourself on whether or not like you guessed correctly, and you just kind of talk about like if somebody put something different than you thought, like maybe why you thought that they would have a particular opinion about that. Anyway, so it kind of just gets the dialogue going about like maybe why people felt strongly about something or they didn't. And does that make sense?
Makes a lot of sense to me.
Okay.
Yeah. Have you ever used
never
it,
seen
Jill?
it.
I'm curious, Jill. Have you used it?
No, I haven't even heard of it before.
All right. Well, as you'll see, it's Bethany. What I like so much about it is it's perspective taking.
Sure.
You could actually use it like I know Jill likes to use anticipatory kind of activities, experiences. You could actually use it pre, during, and post. It's a very interesting way to try to take the perspective of the members in your group as you get to know them. So we've been together about 5 weeks now. What I want you to do, I'll talk you through it. Choose your color. Do you see, well, you're watching my screen, so if you just choose your color here. Okay. Got mine. So I don't know if it will let you choose multiple colors. It probably will. I'm aqua.
I picked green.
Okay.
Red. I don't know if I'm doing it right though.
No, you just click on it, and then you click on the ABC is what we're going to use.
Okay.
Do you see?
Awesome.
Just click on a color and then click on ABC.
Ooh.
And what we're going to do is I've got everybody's name up here. Now, it's a funny way this works. You type it and it floats, and then you just click and it will stay. Okay? You'll get the hang of it. Yeah. So I want you to think about and predict. You're actually predicting based on what you know. If Bethany would prefer nonfiction, if Chris would prefer it. You see what I mean? And you would either agree that yes, Bethany would, or you disagree. And so it's A for agree, D for disagree. And you go through, and we're going to have, usually everybody would have their own score sheet, but I thought it'd be cool. We can just put it on here, and everybody has a different color. And even if you didn't, it would work.
So you fill out everybody's column except your own.
Yes,
right?
exactly. Oh. Okay, so let's try it real quick.
Oh, it's hard.
What?
I think everybody's getting the hang of it, right? There's little floaty letters. Oh.
A little delayed.
Gosh.
Oh my God.
This is work.
It is.
I keep giving myself one. It's okay if you
I
give
listen to
yourself one.
my
It's okay. It's okay. You almost should.
I feel like you should too, so you can commit.
Yeah.
Oh, I don't know what I'm doing.
Drawing.
Just making it really obvious what I think, apparently. Weird.
Well, it does do that, but we're not going to have time to analyze that. I'm not to worry.
I think I got them all now.
Whoops. I didn't mean to put agree under your column. How do you delete?
Oh, you have to delete, you have to actually go up under the history. Do you see undo history?
Yes.
And I'm just hoping that just deletes yours.
I'll find it. Let's see.
If you delete everybody's, I better grab a picture real quick.
I might accidentally undo y'all's too.
It's okay, I got it.
You got it?
Uh-huh.
Okay, I won't touch it then.
I mean, I got it saved, so it's
Okay.
okay. Yeah. Okay, so let's finish up, you guys. Having way too much fun. Okay. Well, let's just take a quick look here while some of you are finishing up. So, interesting questions about nonfiction. It looks like most people, in fact, everybody, somebody thinks that Sadie actually prefers nonfiction. And that could have been Sadie because,
I found that
yeah,
using
please.
blue there.
Do what now?
I think I'm using blue, and there's another one who's also using blue color.
It's okay. It sort of keeps things up. Yeah, that's okay. There was no advantage in using the colors. It just, it was sort of
I
interesting.
prefer nonfiction, I think.
What did you say, Sadie?
I prefer nonfiction.
Okay. All right. Now, see, that's something we obviously did not guess. Well, I'm so glad to know that. No wonder you enjoyed your nonfiction book so much. Let's see. Then, how about? And did we pretty much get everybody else right?
I think so.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. Nonfiction is undertaught. So, I think everybody pretty much agrees that everybody would agree. Let's see, what's going on with Sadie? Do you think, what do you think about nonfiction being undertaught? How is it taught equally or more so in China, Sadie?
I think we are learning nonfiction more,
Uh-huh.
especially in history class.
I think
But
that's fascinating.
but like in our Chinese classes, like traditional Chinese class, I think students are learning nonfiction more.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And with our, regardless of what you think about the Common Core, you got to appreciate that it stresses more nonfiction and more critical thinking. That would be hard to, in any way, disagree with. Okay, how about this one? Boys prefer nonfiction. Got some differences there. Anybody feel strongly about that one?
I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't think just with my kids and seeing them check out books from the library, it's pretty even.
I think that there is actually a myth that boys prefer nonfiction. And usually when we do a semester long, we do a whole unit, CCI, on nonfiction and boys and preferences. And Mark Aronson, who had written a textbook that we used to use, has actually been in the book Hinge. And he would say it's not the content so much that boys prefer. Boys want to control their world. They want to, and sometimes we thought that he was a little chauvinistic with this because we think girls do too. Yeah. But he would say that they want action, they want to do things, and so it's not, the research would say it's not so much the content, but it's how you teach and engaging them. and I can certainly buy that. So it's not a cop-out to say that it would be a cop-out to say, well, boys aren't interested in reading because they prefer nonfiction and we need to study these, Shakespearean plays. Okay, we study nonfiction differently than fiction. So most people agree. Nobody disagreed. Okay. Yeah. And I was going to say that, actually when you think about, well, let me go to the PowerPoint a second. And this will show you. So, because I wanted to share, yeah. Yeah. There. That, actually with nonfiction, okay. To analyze it, we look at underlying themes and perspectives as we would with fiction, but plus, when we're teaching with nonfiction, we read with a critical lens because it's sort of meta. You sort of want to think about the choices that the author made about content and language and how they were shaping your opinion, your perception. So it's a very interesting with nonfiction. You do this when you're reading fiction, but it should definitely be something when we're teaching critical thinking to teach students to think critically about nonfiction and try to analyze the nonfiction and interpret it with that critical lens. Does that make sense? It's sort of an extra layer, I think. Cool. Let me go back to this board real quick. Okay. So the other thing I'm seeing here, there's no such thing as creative nonfiction. And everybody, I got one agree that there's no such thing. All right, either Jill or somebody else thinks Jill.
That was me by accident. That was the one I couldn't ever.
Okay.
I don't actually think that.
I love that. So we all agree there is creative nonfiction. It'll be interesting to see as you talk about your book. Who thinks they read a creative nonfiction book? I did.
I don't think I did.
You don't think you did? Oh,
I don't think I did.
You don't? I'm looking at Sadie's book. Sadie, do you think it was creative nonfiction?
You mean so we have got a job?
Yes. Uh-huh.
I think it's very persuasive, like to tell the story from the children that who have, participated in the march. I think it's a creative way. Like when students read it, they could easily feel like what the children were feeling in the march. I think
so too. I think it's very creatively done. The lines are blurring between fiction and nonfiction. You have many authors writing fiction who use, real characters. I'm just thinking about two of the latest novels I read. Malcolm Sedgwick's She's Not Invisible has a visit to Edgar Allan Poe's home. And he's a character in the story. You've got Jenny Hubbard's And We Stay, and Emily Dickinson is a character. And that's just two examples of young adult fiction. But so authors are writing fiction about real characters, and then nonfiction writers, Laurie Halse Anderson is really good about this, are using dialogues, interviews, conversations, and imagining what was said. And I was working up in Western North Carolina with a teacher at a small elementary school, and when I showed her a book that had some dialogue, she said, well, that can't be nonfiction because that's made up. And so some people are still very, that's why it's sort of controversial, very tentative about, can it be creative if we have imagined conversations? The facts are real as far as we know them. They do the research, but it's presented in a creative way with dialogues or interviews or thinking from that person's perspective, and they definitely do that, and we've got a job. But I had no idea. It's a fascinating look with actual children from the Birmingham March era So it's definitely creative nonfiction. Okay, only an author belonging to a culture should write about that culture. And everybody disagreed. Do you realize the Coretta Scott King Award can only go to an African American? And the purpose, and we also have debated this in class, but it's because they want to encourage more African American authors. So there's a real reason there. Not so much because they're saying that anyone who's not African American can't write about the African American experience. Although Philip Hoos, and I would recommend this book definitely, Philip Hoos wrote a book about Claudette Colvin, I think it's Claudette, who was actually the first to not give up her seat on a bus and went to jail. Have you read that?
Yeah,
okay,
I did.
Well, it's a great book. And see, he wasn't eligible because he wasn't African American for the Coretta Scott King Award. So that's a really interesting, talk about controversy. It's a really interesting fact to debate there. Okay, so that's the way Interact works. And I think it works well to get people talking and trying to take different perspectives. Any comments on that?
I really liked how you had to anticipate what your classmates thought. I thought that was
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So thank you so much for sharing that through your CCI, Bethany. Was it reading and content area? Is that
Yes.
Of course good because see the scaffolded reading experience was nothing new to you. Yeah.
No, I just did it last semester.
Yeah, and see what we're doing is just simply placing that within a collaborative critical inquiry.
It made a lot of sense when I thought about it that way. I just wasn't sure if that was the correct way to be thinking about it. But yeah, it makes sense.
Yeah. Well, and see, you got to realize too, the beauty of it is we're sort of making this up as we go, you guys. That's the beauty of creating, collaborative critical inquiry, a book cast. I mean, where else would you hear that? We're sort of making it up and pulling things together as we go. We're creating. What can I say? Okay. I want to share this because we've talked about critical thinking and creativity all semester. In a short semester. Short session. Okay. So, and if we'll think back on critical thinking. Okay. So it's very simple. Brookfield is the go-to man on critical thinking. Yeah, I definitely recommend his book. But you identify your assumptions, you check out the accuracy and validity of the assumptions, and I've got the little eyeball there because perspective taking is all about being able to see from others' perspectives and think about and consider the validity of assumptions that you might have. And then you take informed action. And he makes the point that you don't just think critically as an activity. You think of it as to do something, to make important decisions and follow through. And again, Jill had shared this really cool digital literacy diagram. Where do creativity and critical thinking and evaluation overlap? I got to ask Brookfield that. He was on campus last year because we all read his book. And he said it's with perspective taking and empathy. To be able to walk a mile in someone else's moccasins, to be able to see as best you can with new eyes from somebody else's perspective is creative. It's being able to imagine and to be able to take those perspectives. And that's where critical thinking and creativity overlap. And I find that really exciting because so often people will say, oh, creativity, you can't teach that, or, it's critical thinking is where it's at. But the two are connected so intricately. They work together. Barack Obama said, to make a habit of empathy is to recognize ourselves in others. I really like that quote. And then Daniel Pink, it actually includes, I've mentioned this before, empathy as one of the 6 senses of creativity. So does that make sense? So to include creativity and critical thinking, it sort of gives support for the idea of the reader response in our teaching too. All right. now, let's see. I think we're ready to talk about our collaborative critical inquiries. And I had imagined that we would each share ours briefly. But I also wanted to talk about, we haven't done a lot with this, although you've done a great job on your blogs of thinking about giving positive, constructive feedback. And you know how I love feedback. And let me turn this off. Ron Berger is sort of the, and I've got the link on your site so you can go to the Hangout site. But Ron Berger is sort of the go-to guy right now on giving positive feedback, and there's just a wonderful video where he shares what happens when you teach kids to give positive feedback and how to do it successfully. I'm really interested because that's what we're working on so hard in our Quail Ridge Teen Writers Collective. I understand that's why people want to come, not because of me, because it was going on before I came, but that's why writers want to come, because oftentimes in their own like high school, middle school writers clubs, everybody says, yeah, that's good, yeah. So there's a lot of celebrating, but there's not a lot of critiquing. So these are serious writers. They want serious critique. So Berger would say that you would give a critique that's kind, that's helpful, and that's specific. And I definitely encourage you to watch the video and read the blog and learn more about Austin's butterfly and see the difference that was made when the teacher modeled giving positive critique and how the students then in his group were able to help him. I think that's really important when we're working with reader response and personal expression to engage kids with literature. Okay, so as we work through this, let's think about giving some positive response. And I actually made a chart where I went through and included everybody's, you can see the planning site, okay? But I also did a strategies for scaffolded reading experience. And I'll bring that up and show you here. That's under cultivating empathy. There you go. Okay, so as we talk about our, it's really small, so you can go to the actual page. I can put, that's either on the page or also paste it in the chat right here. There you go. It's that last one, the Google Docs one, after Claudette Colvin. Okay, so I can go first, or who wants to go first? You can see I sort of listed under pre, during, post what the strategies were. Okay, well, when in doubt, I'll go first. Okay, so yeah. So let me go back to this one. Okay, and I'm going to click on the, before I do that, I just wanted to say that we've talked about creative nonfiction. We did a project last time I talked, ECI 521, called the Change Project. And what we did was look at speculative fiction. You guys familiar with the term speculative fiction?
As in, like, what would happen?
Exactly.
Okay.
It predicts the future. And the beauty of it is kids love it. I mean, dystopias are included in speculative fiction. It's sort of unlimited possibilities. It's preparation for all futures. I love this. Steve Toller says it asks the questions that need to be asked. What is it to be human, and what does that even matter? So I would definitely encourage you. We did this differently, but there's still some really great resources here. Genesis by Bernard Beckett is an amazing speculative novel. Feed by M.T. Anderson, if you haven't read that. I would heartily recommend, for younger kids, Human 4.0 by Lassiter, but The Last Book in the Universe. I bet you know that one, Jill.
I haven't read it, but I'm familiar.
Yeah. Okay, that's a really cool dystopian novel.
I've read that.
Oh, who's read that?
I actually tutored a kid who read it, so I read a good bit of it with him, but it was pretty cool.
I think it is too. And then Unwind by Neil Schusterman. Schusterman actually, I met in person and he came to the book hinge. And Unwind would be wonderful in a text set with The Giver, which is going to be even bigger than ever this summer with the big movie coming out. So anybody read Unwind?
One of my friends read it and recommended it, and I meant to read it, but I haven't. But I kind of know the idea of what's
Yes.
going on.
Yes. I've never met a teen who didn't get into it because, I mean, it's briefly that it's a future age where there's been a big fight over abortion, and Congress has this compromise where every child is born, but at age 13, if they're not fitting in, if they're not contributing, they can be unwound. And so it's a story of these three misfits who are trying to escape being unwound. And it is fascinating. And it raises amazing questions about social justice and what it means to be human. And Bill actually built, when we had the virtual world, an unwind room that would just scare you to death just to look at it. So very cool. Anyway, so I just wanted to mention this resource, which our resource now will be, because I wanted to do nonfiction next. Okay, so let me go to the planning site and that Sadie set up, and I'll go to my project, which was No Crystal Stair. And you guys would be so proud of me. I learned how to use Weebly to do this. And it's actually pretty intuitive. There were some things that stumped me, but I eventually figured it out. So, and I guess I'm proudest of, if you go to About, you'll see that I credit the guy who took a picture of a staircase, the Tulip Staircase. He lives in Great Britain, in Greenwich, and I added a crystal background. I did some photoshopping stuff. Only I used GIMP, which is free, and created this. So that was sort of fun. Okay, so I did an intro, as Bethany included in hers, and just sort of and found this really great reading recitation from the North Carolina poetry. That's the Arts Council does the poetry out loud. So I have that, and then step 1, before you read, and again, you can look at the strategies. What I did, now I know everybody who's ever taken an English course, I wonder what teacher uses this. Carl Jung has used this poem, George Ella Lyon, Where I'm From. Do you guys know that poem?
Yeah.
Yeah. So like I said, there's so many videos online where students have created videos about that. So I almost didn't use it because I thought it's so well known, but it just fits so well here. So I've got the, and those who haven't, say that you would really enjoy this. But it's a way of sort of getting that sense of place and belonging. And in this case, I had them listen to the video, read the poem, and then write their own, just to get this mindset of what it means to belong and to belong to have a place, a sense of place. And then while you read, one of the reasons I love this book is because No Crystal Stair is about Louis Michaud, from a little boy to the day he dies. And he was not always the perfect little boy. And I love it because it's got everything from him. He was tired of picking blueberries for 2 cents a day. So he decided, why don't I just take a couple or 3 of those little pigs and put them in from the white man and put them in a bag, and I'll go sell those. And he made $1.50. So very early he got into a life of crime, a petty crime there. And the beauty is the book, I did not count how many perspectives, but at every point in his life, there's 7 sections in the book. There are people who are talking about him, who are sharing their perspective, their view of Louis. Okay. And so that gave me the idea that wouldn't it be fun if the students who are reading this, readers actually came up with a name and a personality that, like, they were a childhood friend or someone who knew him from childhood, and would, at every end of every section, pause and write pause and actually do a little interview using their phone, or I say class phone, so they could use the voice record, and then share those recordings with the group at the end of each section and write a letter to Lewis, okay? Sort of like words of encouragement or advice on where he is now. Now, does that sound out there, or do you think that would work?
I think that would work. That sounds awesome.
Yeah. Well, it just, that's the beauty of books. Like, you find the book and it just sort of tells you, yes, right from this perspective. And I confess that one of my students did this beautiful city of Verona, where she actually, in those days, it created a Ning. I don't know if you know about Nings, but it's there's the English companion Ning that, what's his name? Burke. You know who I'm talking about, the English teacher. And people join. I know I've used that as a link, but I definitely need to tweet that again. It's a great place, especially for new teachers or teachers interested in things like young adult literature. It's a closed Facebook group is what it is. So this teacher, used to be Nings were free. So Amanda created a Ning for her students studying Shakespeare, and everybody made up this persona, and like they lived in the city of Verona for Romeo and Juliet. And they would carry on conversations about the play in character. So that was very cool. All right. And then, so we would do this all through the book, because that's the whole idea of the scaffolded reading experience, that you're not just letting them out there and saying, have at it, but you're scaffolding it throughout. And then step 3, to do something. I thought, wouldn't it be cool at the end if the group of these friends got together and wrote a Where I'm From poem for Lewis, and being sure to include not only where he belonged, but what he gave back to his community. And I'm hoping that would prepare them to come to, I'm imagining, and many of you had mentioned having a Socratic seminar, Jill had mentioned, but Paideia, Jill, have you ever done Paideia? Or some of you may have studied Paideia in school.
I guess I'm not sure what the difference between Paideia and Socratic Seminary is.
Yeah. The difference, because I wanted to talk about that. The difference is that, and I really enjoyed, you guys can really use the rubric and the instructions that Jill shared in hers for the Socratic seminar. But the difference is that Socratic is basically the general seminar. Okay, Paideia with Mortimer Adler, who's actually Bill has filmed when he was in North Carolina years ago, helping Department of Public Instruction and UNC Chapel Hill set this up. Paideia has a community of people, of practitioners, community of practice that's been working on this for 50 years at least, and they share techniques. There are some techniques I've learned, like the round robin. That's not traditional Socratic, I don't think, where everybody goes around for an opening and just briefly gives a response. There are techniques like, you'll see in the little video I want to show you briefly, techniques for listing 3 goals that you might have for that session, Paideia session. Paideia also does the Paideia model for project model would use a seminar at the beginning of Paideia and then a seminar at the end of Paideia to pull it all together. So the beauty of it is you're not on your own doing Socratic seminars, but you're doing something that has a community behind it and a wealth of research about it. Does that make sense? Cool. All right, so that's mine. We'll again, if we have time, I'd love to show a little bit of the video on Paideia that we filmed. Okay, any questions about my scaffolded reading experience? Well, just to let you know a little bit more about Michaud. So he started out as, let's just say, on the wrong side of the law sometimes. One of the characters later in his book, appears a couple of times, is called Snooze. And Snooze is a young kid on the streets in Harlem who loves to come to the bookstore and sleep. But he's also getting more out of it. Snooze says, yesterday I go into the bookstore and give the professor, that's what they called Lewis, though he had no degree, the closed fist salute. Well, what's that, he asked. Black power, I replied. Cool. Well, where'd you learn that? Mr. Michaud asked. The brothers in the movement, I say. Open your hand, Mr. Michaud says. I do. See, you ain't got nothing in it. He picks up a book, puts it in my hand, and says, now that's power. Tell your brothers in the movement that black is beautiful, but knowledge is power. So it's a really interesting book, and I would encourage you. Again, the perspective taking is great. Okay, so who's next?
I can go next.
Okay.
Do you want me to share my screen, or do you just want to pull it up?
Why don't you share yours, and then you can go.
Yeah, let me just pull it up real quick.
I will end my screen. I just love this. We all know how to share screen.
Sorry, I'm using my dad's computer. I'm out of town again, so. Stop. Okay. Okay. Let's see if I can do this right. Yeah. Alright, so I didn't love. Did it work?
Yeah.
Okay, cool. Just checking. I got some notice on my computer. Okay, so I didn't love the nonfiction book I read, so I felt like some of the activities that I ended up doing probably weren't like the most connected to the book. It was maybe a bit of a stretch, but
what didn't you like about it?
It was not in depth enough. So it was called Wheels of Change. I don't know if you guys read any of the synopsis about it, but essentially it's about the impact of the invention of the bicycle specifically on women, and kind of how it changed women's dress and gender roles, and even contributed to their right to vote because they were mobile for the first time ever, and it kind of created a little bit more, I guess, competition between the genders, because women were able to do things that men were always doing for the first time too. So it sounded really awesome to me, but then like it wasn't very long, and I think like I got an audiobook because that was the easiest way for me. But I think like a physical book, I think it was visually cool. I think it was kind of scrapbooky, but with the audio, I kind of lost any of that like creativity and. Anyways, I wish it would have talked more about like the right to vote and like specific women that use the bicycle in that capacity. I spent a lot of time talking about like bicycle facts and like how it was invented, and I just didn't see how that was related to the title, but whatever. Anyway, so I created a Weebly because I felt like that was the best space for all of this to be accessible for students. So I took one of the scaffolding questions that I think Sadie maybe had come up with, which was just the idea that what are the obstacles to us feeling like we belong, whether it's in society or smaller groups. And I felt like that connected really well with the idea of gender inequality. So I did an intro to the book, but ideally I feel like the pre-activity is where I would like to start. In like an actual classroom setting, and just have students think about what discrimination means to them, and if they've had any experiences with that. I just kind of want to get the juices flowing, and because there's a lot of connotation with the word discrimination, that maybe your own experience kind of changes the way you see it. Anyways, and I thought the idea of a Padlet would be a good way to jot down ideas, but also incorporate technology and the visual element as well, and kind of collaborate in real time. And then I embedded it into Weebly. I don't really know how I would do that in an actual classroom setting, but I don't know, seemed cool. And then bridging.
Was your question, you don't know how you would have them respond on the Padlet?
Yeah, I guess I would be assuming like a BYOD or like a class
kind
of thing. So, I mean, they could all go to the site and comment as well, but I would prefer it be like I have it pulled up and everybody else on a device contributing. But I know that that's a little idealistic, I guess. But,
Well, I'm not. I don't know so much
okay.
though, because many schools these days, have iPad. I'm thinking, like even the co-sketch I used is
Yeah.
mobily responsive.
Okay.
So I haven't checked, but it's possible that Padlet is responsive too, so that you could use a mobile device with it.
Yeah.
But yeah, schools are investing more in mobile devices rather than computer labs these days. So
Yes, absolutely.
it's not far-fetched.
I think your iPad does work with Padlet, but I don't know about mobile. Anyway, so that's my thinking, at least in my ideal situation, that would be what we did. And then I would branch from that idea of discrimination and talk about how women in the turn of the century experienced discrimination, and kind of just give an overview of what our guiding question would be and how we're seeking to answer that through studying this book and the other activities that we would do. So I didn't spend a lot of time on that. I feel like it's not that in depth. But then the during activity was the interact, and I didn't write like a step-by-step thing here. Obviously, I would in real life as well. But essentially, the interact score sheet talks about like whether or not discrimination is ever a good thing or if it's ever warranted, and then whether or not like they could be a part of stopping discrimination, or if it's something that is just always going to exist. So just some things that I felt like came up in the book anyways, that I'd like to get students thinking and talking about. And then the post activity was something that I had suggested on our Google Docs, but I took Diversity in the Classroom with Dr. Jackal. Did anybody else take that class? Yeah. Okay. Well, it's wonderful. You should take it. But he had us do, at the end of our class, he had us do this thing called an othering project. So I kind of stole a little bit from that. The idea behind the othering project is that you do something that is out of your comfort zone. So whether it's like going to a different place of worship than you would typically go to, somewhere where you would be in a minority, any kind of situation where you would be out of your comfort zone. He wanted us to experience that, which kind of goes along with the idea of empathy that we were just talking about. Mm-hmm. So I really wanted my students to think about that, especially with the idea of discrimination and thinking about how gender inequality is still a real thing, as is racism and other things. So I wanted them to interview somebody who was in some way different. So whether it was a different ethnicity or religion, gender, age group, and then I had like a set of questions that they could use to interview their person. But then I wanted them to create like a visual representation of what they experienced in their interview. So I suggested StoryKit as just an easy option for photos and text, and an easy thing to share with other classmates as well. So that was kind of my culminating activity. And then, of course, a reflective blog post just on what they experienced from the interview, and if they had any answers to our guiding question of what are the obstacles to people feeling like they belong in society. So that was kind of my whole deal. I guess if you guys have any questions, go for it.
Yeah. Does anybody thank you, Bethany. As she was describing her scaffolded reading experience, anybody have any thoughts, ideas, suggestions?
I really love the idea that your students are interviewing people that are different from them in the end. I think that's really cool. And then to have them reflect on that in the blog post and to create something visual like the StoryKit is just really great. I think I could see myself using that next year. So awesome. Thanks for doing that.
Yeah. I'm definitely like trying to have just some options, I guess, like in my arsenal as a beginning teacher. Because my go-to is like write in your journal, like write a paper, because that's my experience in school. And so trying to branch out and like make use of the wonderful technology things that are out there. And I was like, I have to stretch and I have to push myself to incorporate more of that kind of stuff. But I think it would be a really cool thing. I feel like as a student it would be much more exciting and engaging than just a regular paper or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I think so too. My only suggestion would be, again, I already said, the interact. Maybe think of some way to use it, maybe a pre-post book or pre-middle, some other, to give a little bit more scaffolding to it.
Okay.
Yeah.
Cool.
Thank you. We should already be getting rounds of applauses, you guys.
I don't know how to unscreen share. Oh, it worked. Okay.
There you go. It worked.
There we
It
go.
worked. Okay, well, let me unplug my waterfall that's going on over here. I don't know if you guys can hear it, and I'll be right back. And then whoever is going next, please go ahead and get your screen up.
Sadie, do you want to go next, or do you want me to go next?
May I go next?
You want to go next? Okay.
How to open my Google Drive there? My documents. How to open it?
Yeah. And once just so you have it open on your screen, then you can go to the Google Plus with the picture, where you're probably seeing Bethany right now, and click on it, and down on the left side you'll see the little arrow thing and see, this is Sadie's first time with the screen share. The little green background with the white arrow. Sadie, if you click on that.
I saw it. And should I click full screen there?
If you click on that, it will show you every window you have open on your computer. And then you click on the one you want to show us.
I have only two windows here. One is like full screen, another one is Google Plus Hangouts. Oh, here, I think.
Okay.
I'll try.
Can you open a new window and look at your Google Docs page or your Google Site page that you put your your scaffolded reading experience on? It needs to be open on your computer so you can click on it. See, I think I can see you're clicking on the Hangout to share that, and so you sort of got this chain going there.
It looks really cool.
What's wrong with it?
It does. I hadn't seen that before. It's like,
oh my God. What should I do now?
It's like the infinity with the mirror thing. So this is what we should do is like open up a new window and open up your Google site for your scaffolded reading experience, okay? And if you can see that on your computer screen and you see your Google Plus Hangout, then you go to under Google Plus Hangout to the second box that's green with a white arrow and click on it, and it will open up and show your other screen too in a little box, and you click on that screen, your SRE on We've Got a Job, and it should pop up instead of your picture.
I should first save this screen of my belonging.
If you can see the screen for your belonging SRE, then you're good. Then you only need to go to your Google Hangout screen and click on the green box with the white arrow.
Would it be okay if we took a brief break?
No worries. Yeah, if you're determined you want to do it, or I can drive, or we can take a brief break, and because we probably need one anyway, because it's almost 8 o'clock. Why don't we take a brief break, grab something to drink, you guys? And so, Sadie, what part are you? What's making sense and what isn't?
And it's like for the screen share here, there are only two screens. Like one is that need to show the full screen. One is the Google Hangout.
Right. Can you see on your screen your belonging project?
Yeah, I open it. I open it here.
Okay, so it's on your
And
screen too.
can you see now? Can you see it now?
No. But if you see that, okay, on your screen, then go up under Google Plus and sort of mouse over it. And under the blue and white box chat, you'll see the green box with the white arrow. It says screen save. You see that, right?
Mm-hmm.
So you just click on that, and it should bring you up all the screens that you have open, and one of them will be your belonging project. Oh, no, you clicked on the Google Hangout again.
Can you see now?
No, we see the Google Hangout again. It's no worries. Let me show it. I'll drive. Yeah. So let me find it on my computer. Because you didn't get to practice with this. But see, what happens is when I think what you're doing is you're clicking on the Google Plus Hangout. I'll show you. Let's see what happens if I do that. Do you see? Instead of seeing me, you see the Google Plus Hangout. That's what we're seeing with you. So I'm not going to choose that one. I'm going to go back and I'm going to choose the Google Docs page. And then from there, I'm going to choose your We've Got a Job. Okay, can you see that?
Yeah, I can see it.
And I'll just drive and you talk about it as you go through. And this is almost better, Sadie, because we can see you and your site at the same time. I like that.
I'm so sorry.
I like that. No. I should have practiced, the screen save. Because everybody else had a chance to practice. Okay. Well, if you need to take a short break, please do.
Oh my God. It's crazy.
I can see you're practicing with your screens. It looks like you're getting there because I see your Gmail now. There you go.
This one?
You got it. I'm going to turn my screensaver off. Congratulations.
And I couldn't see all of you there.
Yeah.
Is that right? You could only see my screen here, right?
Exactly. We see your screen. And on your screen, you're showing us your site. All right, we're ready. Success.
Am I right now?
We're ready.
Okay. So for the before reading activity, because like my students, they don't have any experience of being segregated, so I designed a game like prepare like the cards with different colors and separate the students into different groups, and one of the group would have priority of the others, and for like before it should be like before the class that I'm going to teach. So I would like my students to feel that how do they feel being segregated, and let them to feel like what African American students felt being segregated in the how to say in history. So the during reading activity, I plan to take my students to the computer lab class. I've never used it, and I was also thinking like since my school they are designing, they are using the iPad in class, but only like with high level English students. I would say that I would use computer lab or the iPad in class and let them to before reading, let them to create like some questions, scaffolding questions they have about segregation. And I would introduce the book We Have Got a Job here in the sub-page, and also introduce one of the leaders in the movement, Martin Luther King. You'll be very interested in this person. And then I would use one of the instructional strategy called Clayton KWL strategy. Let them to collect the ideas, what they knew before they are going to read, and also okay, let's come back. Based on this question, the inquiry question, why the segregation system was wrong and must be ended, and after they read the story, they are going to work on this again, like oh no, before reading, what do they want to know about segregation? And they are going to work in groups of 4 or 5, because there's like there are usually 20 students in one class. So for the first and middle column, both are before reading, and then they will read the story by each of them, and then work together again. What I have learned and still needed to learn. First, the post activity would be based on what they have learned. They are going to create a product. It could be in any format, but it should be like Prezi or PowerPoint or VoiceOver or map that could share with everyone, and it could also submit for being graded. Any other thing I should share?
No, congratulations on discovering. Really, had you used the KWL? I don't know about Clayton. I've known it for forever. It seems it's a great reading content area reading strategy. Had you ever used the KWL before?
I haven't used it, but I didn't know it was called KWL strategy.
Yeah, and it just makes sense, especially I think you chose so well because your students have no idea of Martin Luther King and discrimination and civil rights movement in the United States.
They will learn something about Martin Luther King in their American history class, but I want to make sure everybody know that. So I put it in the before reading part to introduce that person.
Yeah. And this is exciting that you'll be using technology really for some of the first times.
I was very excited. Last night when I was thinking, like, when I always think about it, when I go back, I should use, to collaborate technology into my English language teaching. I was so excited.
That's so great. And I think Bethany had commented on the Google Docs. I mean, that's such a creative way to use a simulation with the red cards and the green cards. Have you ever heard there was a famous study, not centuries, but years ago, in which they actually did this in a classroom as a research experiment, and they discriminated against the blue-eyed kids. Or they could have been vice versa, blue-eyed, brown-eyed. But
one day of each.
Yeah, maybe that, and to help kids, feel like what it feels like to experience what it feels like to be marginalized, to be discriminated against for nothing but a common physical trait like that. Okay. Any suggestions, any thoughts as you listen to the description that Sadie shared of her scaffolded reading experience?
I really like that you're having your students choose their own scaffolding questions, Sadie. I thought that was a cool way to have them explore what they're curious about or what interests them. And I think the KWL is a cool way for them to kind of pick their scaffolding questions because it's right there in the last column.
Thank you. In fact, I have one question Like our students are usually classified into different classes according to their English levels. So students will feel like they are being segregated according to their levels. So for we teachers, we also feel not that good since we would talk about like, oh, you're teaching the good classes, I'm teaching, very low level students. So I don't know, like, but if students were not at the same level, it's not that easy for our teachers to plan our teaching. So we don't have any better way to classify students into different classes. Some
What you
students will feel that. I mean, some students, they are in lower level classes. They will feel like we are segregated from higher level students.
It's true. We have the same problem here. We call it tracking, and that students are placed in tracks based on their perceived abilities, and they stay in those tracks forever.
Yes, for the 3 high school years.
The I can't say definitively what the research says because it depends on what you're looking for in the research. But it's very controversial, and many people would say that we group them for the convenience of the teacher rather than for the students. In our country, we have this history of the one-room schoolhouse where everybody was on a wide range of levels and sort of worked together and taught each other. So it's a very controversial question. I think you're right to pursue some sort of solution that doesn't discriminate against students or hold them back. Yeah.
Thank you.
My only suggestion would be, do you think you need to scaffold the production of the response more? Do you think your students will see what I mean? Is that something that will be very different from them to do a personal expression, creative response to a book?
Usually, like when we teach something that relates to literature, like African American literature, we would give them some more background information at that time, like how was that in the Birmingham, and also like how about the big picture of America at that time. I would connect them together, let them know like the background information. Then they would feel like what kind of question they would have according to this topic.
Do you think that would they be used to, and it's not so much using a technology like Prezi or Blogster or StoryKit, would they be used to the whole idea of responding to a book creatively?
Usually our teachers, they ask them to create posters with papers.
Okay.
We don't usually do technological product.
Okay,
And
so
then
good. So
we
they
can
would
post them. Sorry.
No, so you're just saying that you're just taking it digitally or electronically. Well, that makes sense. Good. I was worried that maybe they hadn't had the experience in creating like that. And so I was going to suggest that there's so much online, and I found so many Where I'm From poems, videos by students. I mean, and the idea with teaching creativity is as long as you've got lots of examples and varied examples, it's very good to share with students. But if you just got one or a few, then you could really stifle their creativity.
Yeah, like in like the third week's handout, I think you share with us a lot of links, how to use the links to create videos or animations. I like that way, yeah. If I'm going to ask them to create technological things, I would share the links or like some more samples or examples.
And the best model of creativity for them. You teachers should create your own too. Right, Jill?
No way.
Because I know you do a beautiful job of creating responses to books. Okay, round of applause, please, you guys. And Jill, you're up. Thank you, Sadie.
All right. So, start screen share. Got a little bit of a lag here, so we'll see. All right, do you guys see my screen?
Yeah, you're good.
Yep.
My novel journey? Okay. So I just attached this to my portfolio blog. I just put it on another page here. But basically, my pre-reading activity included the poem Black Box by Nikki Grimes, which is within the novel Bronx Masquerade. Bronx Masquerade is a fiction story, and it takes place in the Bronx. And it's at a high school, and the teacher is teaching about the Harlem Renaissance. And so every Friday he starts having this open mic Friday where the students can read their own poems. So that book consists of, every other chapter there's a poem, but then there's also prose about the character who read his or her poem. That's not what I did my project about, but it's a really great poem, and it really explores the themes of belonging and stereotyping and putting people in boxes, basically. And then I have a link to my lesson plan right here. And basically what I do in the lesson is I pull out, I painted and I used this year. I did go through and I changed some of the questions so they'd have to do more with belonging. But basically I painted this big box all black, and I put it in front of the kids, and I said, what is this? And I made them, talk about what it is, and I said, well, why is it here today? What could it represent? And their ideas are all over the place, but you can kind of guide them in questions and get them to talk about, putting people in boxes and what that might mean and what stereotyping means. And then we read the poem, Black Box, and revisited our questions, and you can really use that as a jumping off point to talk about what makes people feel like they do belong or they don't belong. Is belonging a good thing, or can it be a bad thing? And there's just so many questions. You could even have the kids come up with questions that have to do with belonging as well. During the reading activity, I read Bad Boy this week by Walter Dean Myers, who's a young adult author who he's probably most famous for Monster, but he also wrote a really great biography about Malcolm X that I read a couple of years ago. And anyway, so this story, it's a really interesting perspective because he got in so much trouble when he was growing up. And he really goes into detail about school and the different teachers that had impacts on his life. And he reminded me of, his story reminded me of one of the students that I had this year who got in trouble all the time, but was also really endearing. And it was really interesting to hear a story from a quote-unquote bad kid's perspective, because, you just love him as a narrator, and then sometimes you think, well, what are you doing that for? And it made me think of my student quite a lot. So other books that you could use that I would consider using during this unit and having it kind of be a book club would be American Board Chinese, which I had the chance to read this week as well, and it was awesome. Wonder, Bad Boy, which I did read. Becoming Naomi Leon, that's fiction. Chinese Cinderella is nonfiction. It's a memoir about a daughter who just always felt like she didn't belong. Her mother died when she was giving birth to her. And then Of Beetles and Angels, A Boy's Remarkable Journey from a Refugee Camp to Harvard. That's nonfiction. That's a memoir as well. And then actually I discovered another book by Walter Dean Myers. It's called Just Right, Here's How. And so that's less of a story, but I thought that would be kind of cool to read together with Bad Boy. And then during the reading experience, I thought it would be kind of neat to give the kids a common hashtag to use. And I don't know if it would be best to give them different hashtags for the different books or just a hashtag for all of the books. But I used What is Belonging, and I created an account for Susie Student Face, which is my favorite example. And so as I was reading I tweeted different things that stood out to me in the book that had to do with the themes of belonging. And if more students had been reading with me, then we could have, seen a collective hashtag here. And then there's a way to embed your Twitter feed, but you can also embed a search for hashtags. So I would probably do that in my class website so everybody could see everyone else's tweets. And then my post-reading activity is a Socratic seminar in which we revisit those questions about belonging. And that document there, if you were to click on it, would bring you to a description of what Socratic seminar is that I've used in the past, that I kind of show to students, and we talk about it. And we try to watch videos of other students doing Socratic seminar too. And then we would revisit those questions about belonging. Reading experience after the Socratic seminar, students would have to probably take a note from you, Sadie, and have students pick their own question that had to do with belonging and address what they thought belonging was, or their newfound understanding of belonging based off of the reading experience and based off of the discussion with their classmates. So, yeah. Any questions?
Yeah, I got to add, I think that sounds good. The dilemma here is that you start with this inquiry and you've got your compelling question. And then you really want your students to come up with the scaffolding questions.
Yeah.
And you could actually have your students come up with a compelling question. So that would be ideal. And so you have to realize what we're doing is a bit contrived here with the questions and everything, but at least you're getting something of the process.
Okay.
Yeah. The only thing I would recommend is Storify. I think that once you have your groups do the live tweets, that for some way to get to look back through those and see themes and all, in Storify you can just pull those little tweets over. You could pull representative tweets over, and they could have that a Storify.
Oh,
yeah, that would work great, and they could embed that in their Weebly.
Okay, cool. That's a good idea.
Any other suggestions? Kudos.
I commented in the group chat or whatever, but I thought that the live tweet and the hashtag was really awesome. I think I was thinking about using Twitter, but I feel like it wasn't nearly as cool as yours. So I applaud that, and I think it's an interesting way to think about the definition of belonging and what that really means, as far as just like getting students to discuss, and I feel like it would really flesh out those ideas well, sort of like the Titan pad did for us. And then going back and being able to see how maybe how they've changed their definition, or like as they started the book versus at the end of the book, what it was like. I just feel like it's a cool representation of the thought process. So I thought that was awesome. Thanks.
It really is. Let me add that I've actually seen a presentation by a teacher for kids who don't have smartphones. In his classroom, he would use Google Voice. I don't know if you're familiar with using Google Voice, but Google Voice is how I get my voicemail. You sign up, and you can have as many telephone numbers as you want associated with this one Google number. Now, nobody knows that. I don't even know which one that is. But all of your voicemail is transcribed to an email that you get. And you have this one page where people could actually text you at your Google. I'll tweet that because it's really worth knowing, again, for kids who don't have smartphones. Anybody can use any old phone, and you text to the teacher's Google Voice number, and it shows up all on one page, just like Twitter. So I'll do some research on that. That might be something you could use, Sadie. All right, you guys, a round of applause, please. Thanks so much, you guys. Didn't you enjoy the creative elements in these, you guys?
Yeah.
Yeah, definitely. Well, let me see. We're winding down here. I want to show you. I'm going to take over the screen here for a second and go back to our page here. Let's see. Yeah. Because I have videos that I never get to show, but they're there for you, and I think they could be helpful. Because you will see, whoops, that's the wrong one. Well, let me go back to the Hangout page. There you go. Okay. I'm going to go back to our Hangout page here. Okay, so there are all these videos. The first one, and these are different ways, like when Lyle was talking to us and you ask, how did you study the book? And she said we had groups and we had different chapters. It sounded very much to me like she may be using something called reciprocal teaching, which is part of the Reading Apprenticeship Program. Consider it a Reading in the Content Area program, Bethany. And the beauty of, I encourage you to watch this video. You've never seen such engaged, what might look like hardcore 10th graders over the book night. They're just so into it and thinking critically about it. And to put it simply, reciprocal teaching is where you teach the kids the models for using the reading process to predict, to question, to clarify, to summarize. And they actually, it's like a literature circle, and they use those processes and help each other to read through usually chapters in a book, and then then they bring what they learned to the whole group. So it's a very effective process that I would recommend, and you can take a look at the video and see if you have questions for me. The second one there is, it's a little longer. I was just going to show a little of it, but it's an introduction to the Paideia seminar. And I think it'll be interesting to watch and see. You might spot some differences, Jill. But the beauty of it, again, is that you have this community of practice that people, and I have the link there to the National Paideia Institute, which is in Chapel Hill. And they're always having workshops and things. But it's a really great opportunity to build your Paideia skills. I've tried to do Paideia before, but you really need a group of at least 15 to get it going. Okay, and it's like the height of critical thinking about text. The next one is called The Cost of War, and it's a very moving project where middle graders study war, and they start with real characters from books, nonfiction books and articles, and then they write nonfiction and create videos about them. Well, in this case, I think it was, what is the Photo Story? They did Photo Story about it. So it's a beautiful going from nonfiction to creative writing process. And then the last one is Empty Bowls. I'm, against my better judgment, going to try this real quick because I really think this would be great for you to, no, it's against my better judgment. I won't do it. But if you watch because we only got 8 minutes, if you watch Empty Bowls, this is what I mean about taking critical thinking and doing something with it. That's what Brookfield would say. You don't do it as an exercise, you do it to do something. And in this case, the Asheville Middle School does an Empty Bowls project where they study hunger around the world, including in Asheville. And there's an art component to the project where it's interdisciplinary, while they're studying food insecurity and how that the body reacts to that, while they're studying the history of it, while they're studying mathematics, the economy of it, they're also creating these wonderful little clay bowls. This was invented by 2 art teachers from Michigan. And they have this big event where they sell the bowls and sell soup and bread and soup and water. And the bands play their performances. It's a big celebration. And they give the money to MANA, the food bank in Asheville. So that's what I mean. There's so many amazing opportunities now. Not that this one was technology based. They did make brochures for them, but there's some wonderful opportunities. John Green has a group called Nerd Fighters, and they raise thousands and thousands of dollars to give to Kiva, which make microloans to people in developing countries. Who would have thought? And there's the Harry Potter Alliance, which, again, over the love for literature, this passion for literature, come together and do really good things for people in need. So there's lots and lots of opportunities using digital technology to actually have kids do something. Like the little guy, you have to listen to this too. I've got this on the list here. Last night, I found the Asheville School on Weebly had the podcast for some fifth graders. And one of the little guys, Asher Walker Wilson, had lived in Colombia, and he talked about why we must have access to libraries for all kids in the world. And then he ended up by saying, and we should write a petition. You could do it on change.org, but we should write a petition or write a letter to Obama, about saving our libraries and all. So having kids actually do something. I think that's much more realistic and something we can do in our English classrooms now. Okay. Wrap up now. I guess the important thing is, and I've learned my lesson, I'm only putting on the schedule for a glance what you have to do. Because it was in way too many places. And you guys were good at finding one place I didn't have it. So the schedule at a glance, if you click on the link, okay, it's in big too. This is your checkoff list. Oh, did I put it? Oh, I actually did put it. Where's it big on the page? Let me update this one. Okay, let me go back to here. Is it on this page? Oh, you know what that is? I linked to the wrong. Let me go back to the I got the wrong link there. It looks like. So let me pull this over and go to the link right here. Right there. Google 5. Now go to the schedule at a glance. Here it is. The end of session checkoff sheet. Collaborative critical inquiry on belonging. I want you guys to finalize collaboratively. This may be my biggest challenge, is figuring out. I think when I modeled that maybe I did too much, it looked like I was doing it didn't look like collaboration. So, but I need for you to decide on a pre-inquiry and a post-inquiry, because I want to be able to send other people, and I will, other people to this Google Docs, and I want them to see how you would open up this inquiry and how you would pull it together. And there are a couple of suggestions, but I'm not sure they're finalized. So make sure you finalize that. And then the complete assessment survey for tonight on belonging. And I added a question that someone suggested, so that was helpful. Thank you. Final exam is to update your funds of knowledge, just like you did before, only this time it's in retrospect. I said Friday, but then I said actually you can do it as late as Wednesday of next week if you want to. But I know the motivation will be to go ahead and do it. So anytime you want to do it, just so it's done by next Wednesday, let's say by 5, or just let me know, because grades have to be in on Thursday by 5. And then I did a brief survey. Because our class is too small. I've never taught a class this small. But it's great. It's so small that you can't get a class eval. So I did our own little class eval. So you can do that one. And I just said it's available now. You can just do that before you check out, which is like sometime before now, and let's say next Wednesday, meet with me like for 10, 15 minutes. I just want to do an exit conference at your convenience. So is that clear? Any questions about that? And that's under schedule at a glance. from the
So
navigation.
the CCI, the stuff that we need to finish, we basically just need to type in what we did before class and what we worked on together before class, and
Well,
then
I think right now we have Sadie suggested the green card, red card to begin it, and then I think Bethany had said, well, she had 2 activities she used in hers. I'd sort of like for you guys to decide on this, whole unit project on belonging. What would be a good way to get into it and out of it and make it and finalize that?
So out of the 3 activities, like the different things that we each had, we'll just pick one, and then out of the post activities that we each had, we'll just pick one and put it on there?
No, I wouldn't. It might be something totally different.
Yeah.
And it may be what you already have, but it's just make it final. We begin with this, and we would do a post for this. So it's complete. Okay. Any other questions? Okay. And for tonight, I'm going back to the Hangout. I also have a wall wisher. I'm not getting a lot of feedback on the wall wisher, and I love feedback. So give me some feedback for tonight. Okay. And so that's where you find it. Now let me go back. Stop my screensaver here. Okay. And I just wanted to finish up. I'm going back to my PowerPoint. Are you guys feeling pretty good probably about Google Hangouts now? You can teach in Google Hangout.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. I really like this quote by Ann Collier when you think about what we're doing in using the social media, participatory media, to empower students for full constructive participation in participatory media, culture, and democracy. Because I was so glad we chose the theme of belonging, because you could see throughout the theme of democracy and social justice and civil rights. And so I think that's a really important, crucial part of teaching English. But also add that, I wanted to say last time the feedback I got was the most engaged moment was Bethany's Chalk Talk. I got to think of a different name rather than Chalk Talk. Maybe Live Talk. Most helpful was the scaffolded reading pre, during, post. And most surprising was that all the books we read pushed boundaries. So that's cool. It's going to tell you that we had a great debut at the Teen Writers Collective. Oliver did a tremendous job organizing the thing. And what I did was we videotaped it. Bill videotaped it, professionally videotaped it, and we're giving them their clips, and because it's their creative intellectual property, and they can put it on YouTube, and I will create a playlist and add to it. And so I'll be happy to share that, because there was some very, very powerful poetry. And then, you've seen the quote before, but the idea that to be able to share our knowledge with people and to get to share with them what we learned, and even though it's really hard work, in the end it's really something beautiful. This is one of my 7th grade digital storytellers. I also wanted to mention that please, because each of you guys have a passion for young adult literature, stay connected. We had this graduate school dinner, reunion dinner recently, and my students from class several of them were talking about Unwind and how they still had their classroom, and students loved it. And I went, and what have you read recently? And they were like, duh, Twilight, Hunger Games. It's like, I really want you guys to stay connected. And so I think using Twitter and following people who blog, because there's so many opportunities to find your niche in blogging and share, make a contribution, okay? And American Library Association with not just Prince books, but Alex books, which are adult books that are great for teenagers, and books for reluctant readers, but just Jim Burke and his English companion. Just stay connected. Stay in this community of people who really love young adult literature. Quail Ridge Books actually has a group. Mm-hmm.
This is what I want to ask. Like, even when we finish this class, could we still keep connected? That's what I want.
Do. Please do. I mean, please follow me. I'll follow you. If you have questions, please do stay
Sure.
connected. I think Twitter is probably the best way to do that. Okay. And I've got a question. I want to do an open course where every year people can get together. I know I sort of tried to do that, and Jill had some friends. But I want to do an open course where it's sort of like a MOOC where people can come together and read the latest books and create projects together. So that's sort of my dream at this point. And I'll just end by saying how impressed I was from the very beginning, you guys, where you boldly went to creating these responses, the visual, the images and the photographs and the poetry and the videos, and you just went for it. And I was so proud of you, and I think that teaching is the most creative profession. It's certainly one that has the greatest reach. You'll have to come back and read the slide by Pearl Buck about unless you're creating, you're not really alive. And I think that teaching so that you're using digital technology, you're teaching literacy so kids are continuing to learn as you are, and you're modeling your creativity and your use of digital technologies in the service of teaching literature for young adults. I just can't imagine a better profession and a better way to stay creative and alive and growing. So thank you guys for all you've taught me this semester. Short. Wish I had you for a semester. But I learned a lot too, and I really have appreciated how hard you've worked. So